This podcast is brought to you by Blackaby Ministries International. To find out more, visit blackaby.org.
Welcome to the Richard Blackaby Leadership Podcast. It's my pleasure to be your host. I'm Sam, and joining me and helping take our leadership to the next level is Dr. Richard Blackaby.
Good morning, Sam.
Good morning. How are you?
Good. You're looking bright and cheery for this early hour.
Well, 5 a.m., every Tuesday. It's my delight. I've already been up for 3 hours.
Yeah,
so.
well, getting that quiet time in before the podcast.
Yeah, so probably there is something that's maybe one thing that's more important than all the other things when it comes to leadership, and that's your relationships.
Yeah.
And I think few leaders would say that there was anything more important than the people that they knew and the friends that they had, the relationships that they had, whether that's making them who they are or giving them the opportunity to become who they are in leadership positions and so forth. And so today we want to look at what that means, what that tells you about yourself, the relationships that you keep. And so with that introduction, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, Sam, I think it's been said that self-awareness, self-knowledge is a leader's superpower. If you know yourself well, then you know what you're capable of, you know what to avoid, you know where you're weak, what you need to be careful with.
Yeah.
You know where you're strong, you know where you can have the biggest impact. So self-awareness is so critical, and I think I've studied, as you know, a lot of the lives of a lot of leaders, and if you try to boil down, okay, here's a guy who became a great leader, highly respected. How did he become that? How did he become a person of such influence or such humility or such confidence or such creativity? And no one comes out of the womb that way. No one just is born and immediately leading all the other babies in the nursery. It's you develop into the leader that you become. And so it's always fascinating to say, well, if you're just not born immediately as a leader, then what is it that goes into making certain people so effective, so strong?
Yeah.
And I would say there's at least three things, probably more, but three big ones. One is just going to be your genes, and we've talked about this before. But I've had for the last 6 years now. I've had twin grandsons, and they're not identical twins. They're fraternal. They don't look alike, but they have come from the very same womb. They have grown up in the exact same house. They've been loved equally by their parents, by their grandparents. They're in the same class at school. They have the very same teacher, the same classmates. So much of their life is identical.
Yeah.
And yet, in many ways, their personalities couldn't be more opposite.
Yeah.
And so you realize
they are distinctly individual.
They are, for sure. And it's been fascinating to me. And all you can say is it's the genes. I mean, even though they both came from the same mother, the same father, same grandparents, yet the genes just work themselves out differently in each child. And so, so there are some things that are going to be passed down to us that we have absolutely no say in, that parenting, nothing else. It may help adapt those genes somewhat or get them under control, but that's just the way we're going to be. And then a second thing, I think, is our encounters with God. I think God can transform us. The Holy Spirit can take a selfish, angry, unforgiving jerk of a person and transform them into someone who's Christ-like, who's loving, gracious, humble. And so if you will continue to surrender your life to God and His work, the Holy Spirit can produce all the fruit of the Spirit in your life and make you a joyful, gentle, patient person. And so that's a second huge source of who you ultimately become, is what did you decide to let God do in your life?
Yeah.
But what I want us to focus on today is a third area, and that is our relationships, our encounters with people. And if you were to follow me around for a while and just watch how I lead, how I relate to other people, how I treat people and so on, or how I treat my kids or my grandkids, and you pushed me and said, well, why do you do that? Or what made you decide to do that? If I stopped and thought about it, so much of what I do, I could probably, if I thought long enough, I could probably tell you where I got it, who I got that from.
Yeah.
Who taught me to do that? Who challenged me to, take this area of my life to a higher level? Or maybe who hurt me in this area and made me just determine that I was not going to be like that to others. Or and so much of who we are as leaders today is determined by the kind of encounters we had with people growing up. And I don't mean to psychoanalyze and Freudize all of this, but to say we do become socialized. And Proverbs 13:20, I believe, says if you walk with wise people, you're going to become wise. And you walk with fools, and you're going to become a fool. And especially when you're young, you don't always have a choice in who you're around. If you've got, for instance, if you've got parents that are constantly criticizing you, and your friend who's in your class at school has parents who are constantly praising and blessing them, it's going to have an impact. Now you can survive that and you can overcome it by the grace of God, but you're going to be fighting uphill the whole way because of just the different relationship you had in your life compared to your friend. And so I thought it's interesting sometimes because I'll see some people at times and they'll do certain things and I'll sort of shake my head to say, that's a really intelligent person. Like in so many areas, they're so professional and they're so smart and so gifted. Why would they do that? I mean, that just is something that seems to really harm their marriage. It harms their kids. Can they not see that? Like, does their brain just shut down at certain times? And like, why would they do that? And so many times what you'll find is if you have the opportunity to talk with them and walk with them a little bit in reflecting, you discover, well, years ago, he had this encounter and maybe he had a school teacher who told him that he would never amount to anything, or a parent who said that they were embarrassed by them, and now that's just stuck in their heart and their soul, and they can't get over it. It trips them up time and time again, and so I think the value sometimes in taking an inventory of the relationships in your life is that it helps you begin to understand, well, I wonder if that's why I'm so timid in this area of my life. Mm-hmm. I wonder if this is why I just refuse to take risks in my career. I always want to play it safe, or I don't ever want to, step up and say what I'm thinking. Maybe it's because when I did that in my home, I was immediately shut down all the time. And so there's just a couple of different kinds of relationships that I would maybe point out. One is just, I call it, who are the heroes or the villains in your life? Who are the people that you grew up to admire, that were the people that you looked at with respect, and you said, that's who I would like to be like? Yeah. And who were the villains, the people that when you saw them, you just sort of shook your head and said, I don't want to ever be like that.
Right.
And, it's funny, the kind of heroes or villains sometimes that we can have in our life. Like if you're, it's sad, but statistically, if your dad was in prison, there's about a 70% chance that you will end up in prison. And you think, well, you'd think growing up in a home with your dad or your mom in prison that's the last thing that you'd ever want to do.
Right.
But it but for many that they can, whether it's embarrassing or not to them, that's what they know, and you can admire that and take pride in that. And if you get a negative model, then that means now you may be valuing the wrong things. Someone else's dad got a PhD and was a professor at a university, and so this child, his heroes are all people that are smart and educated. And so, early on in life, it can be surprising sometimes who become our heroes, who we admire. If you really admire someone that can fix cars, your dad could fix anybody's car. Everybody brought their car over to fix. Well, then maybe you end up wanting, thinking that there couldn't be a better life than being a car mechanic, because you help people and you were popular. Everybody liked to bring their vehicle around, and so what a great way to to aspire to be a car mechanic. If you grew up on a farm, you admired farming, and so that they became your heroes. And so especially when you're younger, you can only sort of admire who you've been exposed to, and
Right.
you might not have ever been exposed to other people. I kind of thought about this just even in a historic kind of way. If you were an African American young person back in the 60s, you could, if you admired Malcolm X disagreed with Martin Luther King Jr. He said, "You'll never change society without violence, without the use of force." And so if you valued, and Malcolm X was your hero, then you might get a gun, you might carry a knife, you might get out in the streets and as a young person engage in violence. But if MLK was your hero, he said, let's do this peaceably. Let's do this in a way that, let's rise above our oppressors and act with more dignity, and so on. Well, both of those leaders wanted to free and liberate African Americans, but they took two different approaches. So if you had one hero over the other, it would definitely affect choices you made and how you measured your success and your self-worth. It's kind of like in modern times, if Muhammad was your hero or Jesus was your hero, one was warlike, one gave his life up as a sacrifice. Your heroes have different trajectories. And
Well, they're going to shape the way that you see yourself becoming.
And if you fall short of your heroes, then you can feel like you're a failure all your life because you never acted like that person did. And then there's a second kind of category as well, and those are people that speak into your life. People that maybe some of these heroes you never actually met. They it could even be someone that's from history that you admired, but there's a second kind of person, and that is the kind of person who actually speaks into your life, has talked to you, had conversations with you. And of course, there are some who will speak words of wisdom to you. They'll say things that you hold on to all of your life, and you just know that this is wisdom, and you admire that, and you value that, and you're gonna try to model that. So, I tried, like with my kids, to say. To model a work ethic, to say, just don't be lazy. Kids, take pride in your work. Do things with excellence. Don't do things with half measures. And I tried to instill that in my kids. And, I watch all of them now. They'd be embarrassed to do shoddy work and to just put in a minimal effort. They have too much pride in themselves to do that. But a lot of that was the way they were raised. They had words spoken into them of wisdom to say, look, if you want to get ahead, if you want to have opportunities, then do what you can to the best of your ability, and that will open up the doors for more. Have high standards. Maybe people talked into your life and valued honesty. Just always tell the truth, son, no matter how hard it is. Have integrity. When people speak those kind of words into your life, then you don't want to let them down. And I know even with my dad now is at an age where he's not even on a daily basis aware of what I'm doing, but I still feel like I would never want to let him down. It's like, well, you probably will never know, but that doesn't matter. Growing up, my dad sets the bar pretty high in some areas of life and integrity and walk with God, and whether he ever actually found out or not, I would just not want to disappoint him. And there is some real value in just speaking those kind of words into people's life of value. And yeah, you have to kind of find your moment. But I mean, over the years, I've had some wise people just say some things, and I just made a mental note to say, that's good. I agree with that. I think that's right. And that's going to become another benchmark in my life. But then, of course, there's other people that say things that bring you down. And oftentimes these are parents, unfortunately.
Yeah.
There are parents that will say, well, maybe they've got two daughters and they call one of them the pretty one, Oh, Betty's she's the pretty one. Well, what does that say to the other one,
Yeah.
Or sometimes, well, this son is, he's the athletic one. And the other one listening in is like, okay, well, that means I'm not athletic.
You start categorizing, and
people start
you can
putting
get
labels.
stuck in that box.
And it's amazing to me, the power of those labels.
Yeah.
I mentioned our 6-year-old twins. Emerson, the older one, loves sports. Anything with a ball, a bat, a stick, anything. He just wants to play all the time. Logan is not nearly as enthusiastic about that. And a year or two ago, they were both put in basketball, and of course Emerson just took it up with a vengeance. Wanted to practice all the time in the driveway with his dad, and he led his team in making baskets. And poor Logan, I don't know if he ever made a basket the entire season, and he was out there, but he never really wanted to practice. Didn't he'd go to the games, but he didn't do anything extra. And so even as a grandfather, I had to be careful to not just say, well, Emerson's the athletic one, and Logan's not. Logan is the artist. He's the artistic one, which he is. But then, after that basketball season, his parents discovered that Logan actually had some real issues with his eyesight. They hadn't even realized that.
Yeah.
And they had to get him some glasses. Well, all of a sudden, they said, like, he could barely see, and no one had even realized that. And so it's like, well, is he really not the athletic one, or is he just the one that when he was playing in a sport, he couldn't see the rim to shoot a basket, He couldn't see the ball when it was being passed to him. Is it really that he's not athletic, or that, if you were just too quick to label him,
right,
and all he needed was a good pair of glasses, and then all of a sudden he's far more interested now, and now he can see why would he want to play catch when he couldn't see the ball coming toward him?
Right.
That would be a scary thing, but nothing to do with sports. Just, and so, we've all had those people. Maybe it was a boss that said some things that were just very cutting, that just gutted our self-confidence, and you can't get past that, and it's just, it's amazing to me the influence people have, like a simple thing, but they were growing up. I had a couple of rough years in middle school, and there were a couple of just real jerks that were in my grade that made my life pretty miserable.
I think everybody had a couple of rough years in middle school.
I think that sort of goes with the territory.
Yeah, I think those rough years are called middle school.
Yeah, but to this day, if there was someone in your childhood that you just really did not like, and if you remember their names, isn't it funny how you can associate dislike with a certain name?
Mm-hmm.
Like there are certain names of people that I did not like back in my youth, that if my wife, not knowing any of that, if my wife had suggested that we name one of our kids one of those names, I would say, I'm not going to name my child that. And there's nothing wrong with the name. It's just that I associate it with someone that brought me pain and discomfort. And I think in a small way, what that is saying is that reminds me that those people spoke pain into my life. They brought pain into my life, and even as a grown adult, I wonder if I still have to overcome some of that.
Yeah. Well, let's take a quick break here, and we'll wrap up in just a few minutes. This fall, Blackaby Ministries is hosting 2 spiritual leadership coaching workshops. One in the Atlanta area and the other is fully online. The focus of these workshops are learning how to ask the right questions to help move people onto God's agenda. The online workshop is September 13th through the 15th, and the in-person workshop is October 21st through the 23rd. To find out more and to register, visit blackabycoaching.org. Links will be in the show notes. Rich, I don't know where or who to attribute this to, but I've heard it said that you're the average of the company that you keep, and I think that's such a powerful image for us as we think about our friends and relatives and just our peer group, essentially. And maybe just in the last few minutes, we've got a few of the categories to go through to just see the different types of relationships that can influence us.
Yeah, and Sam, I think you're right. Now as adults, you have way more say in who you associate with. I mean, you might not be able to pick your boss, and you can't necessarily pick your family that you're into, and so there's some relationships you may just have to navigate. Mm-hmm. But who your friends are, who you spend time with, and so certainly you can try to raise the bar. But as we've talked about, just looking backward, looking in your past to say, how have these relationships affected me? Because two people, maybe I have an identical twin, maybe we come from the exact same gene pool and we were raised the very same, and so we should be the same kind of leader. We should be the same kind of friend, adult, Christian, but over the course of our lives, we've had different relationships. And even if our genes were the same and our upbringing, our home life was the same, the fact that we interacted with different people would end up making us different, just because of those interactions if we were socialized differently. So we looked at a couple of those people that, for one, just who were the heroes to us or the villains, looking at people that encouraged us, spoke life into us or spoke death. And then just a couple other, and then those who healed us and those who hurt us. And there's some people that if you think back to your lowest points in your life, and then think of who were those people that came around at the right moment and just lifted you up, believed in you, wept with you. They just did whatever you needed. They restored your soul. And then think about people that did the opposite, who took you down, who hurt you. And I remember a woman that I met years ago. She'd gone through a very, very painful divorce, and of course, divorce in many ways can be more painful even than death. But she just could not get over it, and I mean, year after year after year, it was just like she was just now programmed to have a miserable remainder of her life. Always looked sad. I mean, if a waitress at a restaurant came up to take her order, this woman would start telling her about her horrible ex-husband. It's just like anyone who'd be around her, she just had to keep talking about it. And literally years and years later, I just saw to an extreme what happens sometimes when someone can harm you in a way that just almost locks you into a life of hurt. And there's others that just, they at the right moment were there for you. And I've got some people like that, and they're not perfect, and it's not like everything they did was awesome, but I'll tell you what, they will always have a special place in my heart, because when I really needed somebody at that point in my life, they were there, and God just used them to make a difference. And so kind of similarly, I just like to say there are some people who make me laugh, and there are people that have made me cry. There are some that have hurt my feelings, humiliated me, just said some cutting things that were just really difficult to get past. And sometimes they did it on purpose. Sometimes they didn't know what they were even saying. But and then there's others that, I look back when I take an audit of the laughter in my life, and I realize, well, there's a handful of people who've been largely responsible for much of that laughter.
Yeah.
I've got a cousin, Rob, that's like that. I've got a number of fun relatives, but Rob, my cousin, whenever we get around, we just know. I mean, we'll just start grinning just when we see each other, because we know that we're going to start. We'll just get
trouble
goofy.
when the two of you are in the same room.
There's just some people you can really let your hair down with and laugh, and so you realize, a lot of the laughter in my life, the joy in my life, has come from some certain people, and I wonder if I would have laughed nearly as much if I hadn't had these people in my life, or I wonder if I would have cried as much if these people hadn't been in my life. But, and sometimes the crying is not just that they hurt you, but, there are certain people that just know how to weep with you.
Yeah.
And, you've got those friends that you tell them you're having a horrible day, and, oh, sorry to hear that, and, hey, did you catch the ball game last night? Like, they're just not. They're not going to go there with you, They're not going to ruin their day because you're having a bad day. But then there's others that truly do feel for you, that do care, that follow up and want to know how you're doing. And those people, they teach you about compassion and empathy, and make you realize that you need to be maybe a better friend yourself to others. And then the last category that I just jotted down was, some people just make you wiser, and some people make you dumber. Some people just give you tips that you can just practice these in your life, and it's going to lead to success. And there's others that tell you stuff that if you follow that advice, it's just going to lead to trouble. I remember one of the first jobs I had working at a lumber yard, and the very first day I'm working, the guy that had a similar job as me, but he was the veteran, the elder statesman. He first advice he gave me was how to avoid doing any more than you had to, and where to stand so that the boss couldn't look out the window and see you just standing around doing nothing.
Real salt of the earth guy.
Yeah, and and I mean, he was trying to look out for me, and he wasn't trying to get me in trouble. He was trying to say, when you're slacking off, be sure to slack off here, because they can't see you from the office there. And he's trying to help me out, but he was giving me bad advice.
Yeah.
And then there's other people that would say some things to me, maybe about how to preach, or how to pray, or how to treat people, how to treat my wife, and I would just file that away and say, you know what, that just sounds really smart. That just sounds wise. Like, if I do that, I think my marriage is going to be better because of that. And so when I look back, in fact, even, sometimes I've said, when I think of things that were successful for Lisa and me as parents, almost everything that I think we did that went well, I could probably, if I thought about it long enough, remember who it was we learned that from, who just said some words of wisdom that I latched onto and just said, I think that sounds right. That sounds like what I want to do.
Yeah.
And so, if we were to kind of just wrap this up, just take inventory, I would say, you can't redo the past. You can't go back and say, okay, I'm going to go back and delete out my dad, who has put me down all the time, and I'm going to insert in a loving, uplifting father. Like, you can't do that.
Yeah.
But you can go back and reflect and say, well, maybe this is why I don't have more confidence. And this is why I'm always timid. That, my dad, if I came home with an A on my report card, he would say, why didn't you get an A+? And so I realized even today as an adult, I'm never satisfied. I can't just celebrate getting a success because I know my dad would be saying, but you could have done better. And how do if I recognize that's my problem, that's why I can't ever just, enjoy what I have. And then I just have to sort of reject that voice of my dad and say, you know what, actually an A is really good. It's the way above average, and I'm happy with that, and I can be proud of that.
Yeah.
And so, and I think some other times you need to celebrate and say, when you realize, God put some strategic people along my path that spoke words of wisdom, they laughed with me, they brought healing right when I needed it. You begin to realize, you know what, as I look back, I realize God's been looking out for me my whole life. Just whenever I needed a wise counselor, a loyal friend, someone that would believe in me, someone that would just pick up the phone and reach out to me at a weak moment, God seems to always have placed someone along my path. And I think he's been looking out for me my whole life. And I get a sense, truly, if I have success today, it's because God has very deftly put the right people around my life along the path. And so, lastly, we just would say, now as an adult, you have a lot more freedom in making those choices. And
Right.
so look for people that will bring laughter into your life. Look for people that bring wisdom. Look for people that truly will care about you if you're hurting, will weep with you when you weep, laugh when you're laughing. And will bring healing. Maybe there's areas of your life that still need some healing, and there are certain kinds of people that God uses to do that with.
Yeah.
But be proactive and to realize it's not just, it's not just your genes, it's not just your circumstance. You can I would just say be proactive in your socialization. And so you're going to continue to be socialized by others. You're going to continue to be impacted. So put the right kind of people around you so you're going to get the right kind of impact.
Well, knowing that the company you keep has a profound impact on the person you become.
Yeah.
You should be very intentional about the company that you keep.
Keep raising the bar.
Yeah. So, well, this is great stuff, very practical, and I appreciate you taking the time, Richard.
Thanks for listening to the podcast. If this is something you enjoyed, it really makes a difference if you leave a review and a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. Don't forget to subscribe and share with your friends. We always love hearing from our listeners, so email us at podcast@blackaby.org.